think they had an idea of how it might work out, which I suspect largely was about getting over into Israeli territory, probably having a firefight with the IDF taking prisoners and making a point. I think it'd be naive to assume that they didn't intend to cause some havoc amongst in local towns and villages as well. But when they got there, they found that there weren't very many Israeli troops there, and they went on the rampage.
And Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College London, Sir Lawrence Freedman. Good evening to you.
Hi.
What Anthony Blinken was leaning into there, many will argue, is not possible. It's impossible to support the elimination of Hamas, to support Israel in their quest to do that, and not kill innocent Palestinians living in Gaza. How do you strategize to avoid that awful conundrum in war? You can't do both things, can you?
Well,
or can you?
No. I mean, there are no good options in any war. If you're going to try to deal with an enemy that's embedded in civilian areas, then you'll kill civilians as you do so. This happened in all wars. We killed lots of French people just before the Normandy landings, trying to weaken the German positions. So it happens in war, and that's not to be callous about it. But what's going on is horrible, and it doesn't do the long term any good, as Anthony Blinken's remarks, I think, were trying to say. I think the problem is a deeper one at the moment. Israel is setting itself ambitious targets. It's very hard to see how it can be achieved through the means it has available. It's easy language to talk about eliminating Hamas. It's a very large group of people, very large organization in a population of 2.3 million, many of whom no doubt don't support Hamas, but many do. So my concern is not only the suffering of all people that's happening at the moment, but it's not clear what the end game of all of this is. I think that was part of the problem with what Hamas did. They created a situation without thinking through where it was leading, and now Israel is responding. But again, they're setting themselves objectives that may just lead to more cycles of violence.
So that's what your analysis is that, you know, even though this attack was obviously months in the planning, there was a failure by Israeli intelligence services to pick up on it, which must have meant some level of sophistication from Hamas in planning it, that they've planned it to make a point, but you say you don't think that they really thought much more beyond that.
I think they had an idea of how it might work out, which I suspect largely was about getting over into Israeli territory, probably having a firefight with the IDF taking prisoners and making a point. I think it'd be naive to assume that they didn't intend to cause some havoc amongst in local towns and villages as well. But when they got there, they found that there weren't very many Israeli troops there, and they went on the rampage. So what might have been seen as a bold and audacious move turned into a complete atrocity, and that's led to the reactions that we see. Even if it had ended up in a more limited sense, it's still not clear what the Palestinians would have expected to come out of this, other than that have almost certainly got some of the airstrikes that they've got. So it was I can understand why they planned it. It was a long time ago. They felt that their cause was being neglected, that other Arab governments were going off doing deals with Israel while not taking account of them, that the blockade was still intense, though in some respects it had been a bit eased. So you can see the frustrations and that led to all of this. But unfortunately, with when you're using armed force, you've got to think through where it's leading.
What is the UK's role in this, Lawrence? We understand that the Britain sent 2 Royal Navy ships to the Eastern Mediterranean. They'll begin surveillance flights off the coast of Israel in a show of military support. Will the international community, will the UK be asked to step up in their support? And should there be caution urged there?
I don't think it will go much further than it's gone at the moment. I think this is maybe a show of solidarity as described, but Israel does tend to fight its own wars, so I don't think there'll be any expectations beyond that. I think that there could be humanitarian issues coming up if the situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate, and there may be roles there. I think the Turks are talking about that as well. But I have no special information on that. I think this is just what it says. It's a show of solidarity after the Hamas attacks.
Meanwhile, Russia has this evening accused Israel of violating international law by attacking Syria with airstrikes earlier today. Israeli missiles, we know today, have struck airports in Damascus and in Aleppo. What are your concerns and your thoughts about, for example, Russia weighing in on this, the influence of Iran and Hezbollah? We know that there have been missiles fired from Lebanon into Israel and retaliation from Israel as well. There is a danger here that this war will have much more far-reaching consequences, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things going on here. First, I think the major concern for Israel is Hezbollah joining in. So far, there's no indication that they're about to do that, and I would be surprised if they rushed in. But if things got really nasty and intense, the pressure could grow. I think it suits Iran, who basically controls Hezbollah, to hold back on this, and also Lebanon, which Hezbollah is a part, is not in a great state itself. Russia is now very much part of a nexus involving Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah, largely because of its own weaknesses and because of its war in Ukraine. It's had to turn to Iran for support, getting drones from them and other support. And one of the surprises in some way of this, because Netanyahu in the past has had quite good relations with Putin, and Israel was not one to show great solidarity with Ukraine. Ukraine showed more solidarity with Israel than the other way around. But Putin has now aligned himself much more with that strand of opinion, which I suspect it carries some dangers and risks for him. I don't think it leads to very much at the moment. I mean, he's not available as any sort of mediator, but it's an interesting, potentially disturbing shift in international affairs. The Iran-Russia link is getting much stronger.
Look, it's been so fascinating to speak to you. I could go on for hours, likely, but you've got an evening to get back to. And I've got other guests to speak to, but it's always a great pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much. Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College London, Sir Lawrence Freedman. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good talking to you.